Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and were you aware that the next WoW update of patch 1107 is actually launching in about 2 weeks from now? And this update brings with it a bunch of new features, from a new island to a lot of different catch-up elements to a new gearing component for all our characters for endgame content, which are covered pretty diligently on this channel, going over all of the major features. However, this update also brings with it a lot of smaller features, from brand new collectibles to new visual updates for certain racial options to some of the more unique items that you'll be able to unlock and earn once 1107 officially goes live, but also an opportunity for players that might have missed out on certain cosmetics from older expansions, a second chance for you to be able to obtain them with 1107 going live. So that's what I wanted to focus today's video on all these smaller features that usually get missed by a majority of players regarding the patch 1107. As always, if you want to see more regular updates for the War Within expansion or any of the future updates like 11.1, or even some of the future updates we'll hopefully have for the expansion of Midnight, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. Were you aware that 1107 is actually launching very soon? I feel like it just hit me the other day, but when going over some of the newer, smaller features that are arriving with this update, one of the first big ones is actually less barriers for cross-faction content to some degree. Ever since they added the cross-faction feature, which I think was one of the better features when it comes to WoW, I think the pre-made group content such as PvP as well as Mythic Plus and raiding has gotten much easier to get into, since you have now a much bigger pool of players to queue the content with, and it looks like some of those barriers of cross-faction are arriving for randomly queued content. Like, you'll be able to start to queue random battlegrounds as a cross-faction group, though you do have to have a pre-made group with, let's say, a friend. One of you is Alliance, one of you is Horde, but both of you can queue for random battlegrounds together into a cross-faction group. So hopefully in the future they can make it so that you could just pick random battlegrounds and choose a cross-faction type of environment, and maybe let the cross-faction aspect be a default when it comes to random BGs, because that would make it a little bit easier for you to queue, whether you queue in as Alliance or as a Horde player. Even more cross-faction is being added into the dungeon groups, however with a lot of limitations, but technically you will be able to queue for random dungeon content with a pre-made group of friends from either of the two factions. But to have an actual group to be able to queue for random group content, you will require to have a full pre-made group of 5 players, but as long as you have 5 players for a dungeon queue, it doesn't matter which faction any of you play. However, it will require for you to have all 5 players be part of the same group in order to queue for random dungeons. Hopefully, just like with BGs, they'll eventually move in a direction where you can just randomly queue for dungeons with any groups of players between the Alliance and the Horde, as eliminating those faction barriers is actually going to lead to improvements when it comes to the time spent in the random group finder, giving you a much bigger pool of tanks, healers, and DPS to queue with, whether you're leveling a brand new character or are doing dungeons at max level. And they've been really skittish about trying to implement cross-faction as a default, but I really think they should just pull the plug and make it a default going forward, though I imagine some players would have an issue seeing Alliance and Horde playing together, even though that's basically what we do at max level as is. So once patch 1107 launches, we'll be getting access to a brand new zone of the Siren Isle. And with the Siren Isle, we actually get 2 new ways to traverse back and forth between the isle. The first will be how you came to the Siren Isle initially, which is on a Zeppelin that takes you back to Dornogal, and you'll be able to traverse a back and forth as much as you want to. However, the Siren Isle will also have a second path that you can take in order to get back to that zone. Another way to get back and forth from the isle is to take the Mole Machine Transport, which will take you directly to Gundergrass. So now there's a little bit more of interconnected pathways to the new zone, as well as back to some of the zones of the Kaz Algar, which if anything will hopefully serve as a nice bit of shortcut in between all of the major zones of this expansion. Patch 1107 brings with it also a bunch of new mounts, but one of them is one of the more exciting ones if you've ever played the Battle of Azeroth expansion with the Jani's Trashpile, otherwise known as the fan favorite Trashloa, becoming a mount that you can earn with a fairly extensive achievement, a Farewell to Arms. Players that have already gotten the achievement on live realms can actually test out how this mount works on the PTR, and then we find out that not only are the nerf and some requirements for the achievement, but also whenever you mount up on Jani's Trashpile, instead of mounting up on the Rapture, you actually become the Rapture Loa instead. And when mounted, it also plays Jani's original voice lines as well. which I think only adds to the raw uniqueness of this mount. And it's one of the handful of few mounts that allows you to transform into the mount rather than mounting on top of the mount directly. Also, we got some new dates for Plunderstorm, at least when it comes to the in-game data mining. It looks like the actual, maybe potentially official date of the launch for Plunderstorm will be January the 14th, with the event lasting all the way till February the 18th, so about a month's worth of time. Which also means that by the time that the event ends, this will likely be the release of the patch 11.1 as well, based on the recent 2025 roadmap. We also know that the Plunderstorm is going to have a brand new practice mode, with potentially a trio mode retiring this time around. But with a brand new practice mode, this is assumed, since we can't really test on PTR, that you'll likely be able to test out Plunderstorm and play it against NPCs instead of against other players. This does make me wonder if they will allow you to still earn plunder while playing the practice mode of Plunderstorm, but I think some players would actually prefer to have some kind of a mode like that, because when Plunderstorm initially released, some players were really turned off from the idea that you had to fight against other players to earn plunder. But I think Plunderstorm would not be the same if it didn't have that PvP environment and PvP type of gameplay behind it though. So I wonder how this practice mode will work once Plunderstorm officially launches. Next, the Zone of Siren Isle comes with a bunch of different vendors, some of which will be used in order to help you catch up some of your old characters, either with additional armor, gear, or even new ways that you will be able to upgrade the new ring that will be made available once the zone launches, with the actual island itself full of activities, events, rares, and powerful enemies that are fantastic when it comes to catching up all of your characters ahead of the Season 2 content. However, the Zone of Siren Isle is also filled with a lot of opportunity for you to get a ton of new cosmetics for the same currency that you'll be using to upgrade all of your old characters' gear, and that is the currency of Flame Blessed Iron, which you earn just for participating in majority of the zone's open world content. And the amount of transmogs on these vendors is actually kind of staggering. There's so many different sets for you to earn, with so many different types, like a very Kultiran pirate-esque sets that are available from Taljori, one of the different vendors available on the island. Then we also have the Valajar sets on top of it, and there's so many different variations of these sets with various weapons, various armors, and so many different items for you to obtain. But also Naga-themed items as well, very similar to the Zone of Nazjatar, with the zone itself offering a ton of different cosmetic items for you to be able to obtain, a variety of different sets, a variety of different pieces, and a ton of new items to simply add to your collections. There's even now a new vendor that has all of the unused dwarven items that are now also purchasable for the same currency, from the variety of different tabards that are made available as of this newest update, to some of the different earthen backpacks that you'll now be able to collect and earn as well. So a variety of different earthen unique weapons, from hammers, chalices, you have yourself meteor pitchers, and even a toy with the Awakened Supply Crate. Also, during the expansion of Dragonflight, there was a unique mount that was added for a limited amount of time called the Sandy Shalewing. It was one of the more unique Shalewing mounts available during the Zaralek Caverns patch, but it was only available for a limited amount of time during the Dragonflight's Turbulent Timeways event, which will be seeing a very similar type of event with the release of this specific update. However, if you missed out on a chance to buy the Sandy Shalewing, you will be able to reacquire this mount on any of the Timewalking vendors, which gives players yet another chance to be able to acquire a mount that was only available for a limited amount of time during a very specific expansion. The mount will set you back 5,000 Time Warp badges, so it's about similar in terms of price for some of the other Time Warp mounts, but still is just another opportunity for players to be able to get a mount that you might have missed out on in the last expansion. However, not only are we getting the Shalewing mount on the Timewalking vendors, but also the Warlord's General, Mr. Pandaria, Legion, and Cataclysm Timewalking vendors are getting a bit of a refresher, very similar to what we saw with the TBC and Wrath of Lich King vendors. Not only are we getting some brand new mounts, such as the Urzal Flesh Ripper, which is one of the coolest mounts that are available from the expansion of Legion Timewalking vendor, but we'll also be getting other items such as the Korkron Shoulders, which are available for everybody else, but also a very unique cosmetic only for Dalaran of the Shadowpan guys, which is more or less the Shadowpan helmets that certain NPCs wear. They're only unique to the Pandaren variants. Warlord's General will have some of the different cosmetic recolors of crafted sets, such as the Shadowmoon Anchor Knight's Guard Plate, and there'll be one available for Plate class, Mail classes, cloth classes, and leather classes. Cataclysm will bring in very similar stuff to Warlord's General with 4 unique ensembles, one for leather classes, which is the Druid PvP set. Then there's also a cloth set, which is the major set available for all cloth wearers, the Warriors plate set available for all plate wearers, and the Hunter's mail set available for all mail wearers. Legion will also do the same for plate, cloth, leather, and mail wearers, but they will bring in one of the trading post items as one of the things that you could purchase on the Timewalking vendor, as well as certain weapons such as the Howling Echoes. If you missed out whenever the Blackrook Hold dungeon was made available during Mythic Plus during Dragonflight, you'll now be able to repurchase this item from the Timewalking vendors, as well as a good portion of the Nightborn specific items, which have one of the most unique looks of all the different pieces, from the edge of the first blade sword item, as well as the Crux of Blind Faith, which is a Nightborn themed staff variant, as well as a variety of other weapon options. Then there's also a small feature that a lot of people miss when it comes to Void Elves. As part of the 1107 update, a lot of different racials are getting a variety of different buffs, from Worgen, Zendalari, Maga Orcs, High Mountain Tauren, Lightforged Jani, the Nightborn, and even the Void Elves, which I think the Void Elves themselves are actually getting one of the better updates with the Entropic Embrace, getting amped up to 5% additional damage for 12 seconds, which is kind of nuts to be honest. But the Void Elves are also getting a unique change in terms of the animations behind the Spatial Rift ability, with the War Within expansion being very Void themed, with Xalatath involved in everything else. The Void Elves are getting a little bit more love regarding some of the different animations for that racial specifically. Very similar to some of the animations observed with the Shadow Priest Void Rift ability, how it has all these different crystals swirling around it into this massive void that eventually erupts on the target. That type of a similar animation can be observed in the Void Rift ability itself. When you send out the Rift, it has a little bit more of this like unique shadowy look to it, but when you actually port, now it has more of this crystal shattering effect behind it too, which I think is a very nice touch, especially if you're someone who is excited to play a Void Elf for this Void themed expansion, especially when preparing ahead for the next expansion of Midnight, which is going to be even more Void themed going forward. But it's just a nice little visual touch, and hopefully we'll see more type of changes like these for some of the other racials as we head further into future patches and expansions. As always, I want to thank all of you so much for watching. I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give this video a like. I would very much appreciate it. Join our Discord community to keep up with all the regular War Within changes and all the regular posts that we do over there. As always, let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see all of you guys in the next one.